This is the 2023 Brewtubers Online Brewers Club Yeast Experiment, British Brown Ale. Thanks to our sponsors: Imperial Yeast, 5 Star Chemicals, Yakima Valley Hops, Beer and Wine Hobby Homebrew Store, and Brewers Hardware. Let's get tasting.
Hello out there, this is Kurt from Fermentation Adventures, checking in with the first beer from the Brewtubers 2023 Yeast Experiment. Not going to talk too much about the beer itself beyond right now. This is the beer I brewed. This is a British brown ale that was brewed, in my instance, with Wyeast. Let's see what it was again. Is brewed with Wyeast 1469 West Yorkshire Ale yeast in my example. I'm not going to run down too much of the description of the beer other than just reset on what was actually used. I have a previous video which I'll link to, and it's probably in the same playlist, describing the beer itself and the parameters and kind of what I got from it, or at least what the final calculations was for this beer. So let's just run through my thoughts on the beer itself. I've had this, I brewed it quite a while ago. It was brewed in September. It's been in the keg pretty much, I believe it was around the beginning of October, and it has cleared up quite a bit. This is now early in December, so it's been in the keg for a good 8 weeks. So this is, I would think for a British brown ale, this is a good conditioning time. You can see here, there's not a lot of head showing right now. Again, unfortunately, I had kegged a bunch that I sent out to all the other Brewtubers for them to test, which you can see in the other videos. But I had kept a can I had planned on keeping a can, and I would review that can. I must have thought I had more cans or whatever. I must have gotten drank, so it is not there right now, or I might have gave it to a friend as well. But this is off the keg. It's fresh off the keg. It's probably a little cold. I just poured it probably about 5 minutes before I started recording here, so it is kind of a bit cold. The head itself dissipated a little bit right off the get-go. If I just shake it around here, and you can look at it again, they just build up some head. There's not a huge amount of lacing. We get some of this, some rocky lacing. The foam itself tends to be a little tight when it's sticking around. I'm sure as I drink it and probably take some more up-close shots of it, you'll see it does tend to be a nice little tight head. The head itself is probably in the ivory to beige color range. It's not super dark, but it's definitely not a clear white head. And I will say, I'm looking down, I'm referring to a BJCP score sheet here just so I can go through the usual process to kind of keep myself on task of talking about the similar points for each beer. I'm not going to score them. We are asked to rank them a little bit on what our preference is. But again, I'm just jumping in right here with the appearance itself. So again, started with the head and the color. The retention doesn't stick around too long. There is this, tends to be this little light skim of foam right over the top. So it's, it's kind of a light skim. That's what persists. The clarity itself, it's probably hard to really see, but this has really dropped out to be quite, I wouldn't say it's exactly brilliant, but for a brown ale is really, really clear. Is a very clear beer at this point. These were all fine with gelatin, or all our samples were fine with gelatin. So this one was as well. I find it with gelatin in the fermenter, and again after another 2 months in the keg, it's really dropped out quite clear, and the color itself is right in that classic, I would say a classic brown ale. First, when I kegged it, it was kind of more, even with the initial findings, it did clear up a little bit, but that first week or two in the keg, it was a little, let's say it was on the hazy end, and it tended to be fairly dark and ruddy. So a little bit more on that. It was probably more in a real dark brown color, but now it is really like a nice, bright brown, at least when the ring light here is shining on it. All right, so let's go in and let's get a little bit of the aroma. Again, I'll try to talk about the malt, hops, and fermentation character. Again, right now I'm not getting much in the way of hops. Maybe as I'm, taking that sniff and exhaling, I might get a little bit of that traditional, probably the EKG, or a herby EKG aroma, a little bit of that in there. But again, I'm just wondering if I'm being colored and biased because I know what's actually in this beer, that's where I'm perceiving it. The malt itself tends to, for me, when I first pour this, when I first smell it, I get quite a bit of chocolate from it. That kind of dark cacao nib, classic chocolate aroma was coming off of this. Again, there is that pale chocolate malt that's in there. Now that I think about it, I was just about to say there's no chocolate malt in here, but there is 2% pale chocolate. Should have been what we've used. And I do get a little bit of that chocolate character, at least initially. Let's see. Sorry, I try to reset my sniffer here a little bit. Yeah, and I do get a little bit of like a toastiness. I know when I talked about this before in another context, yeah, it's like a really dark toast I get from it. It's not quite the roast or the burning you would have on a toast. It's probably that dark brown before it starts to burn. Some might say that's roast, but again, I'd say it's like a dark toast character is coming from this guy. Fermentation character itself, I don't really get much of a fermentation ester or anything from that. Maybe it's getting masked by the malt flavors. I do as well get like kind of a burnt sugar, or kind of a not quite a molasses, maybe like the sugar in the raw type of thing. If you mix that up, maybe that type of thing. I don't know, or like a kind of like a burnt sugar thing. So I mean, overall, I think the aroma is quite pleasant for a brown ale, certainly. Let's see if it's gonna focus on this. Just get a look this way. I think it's for brown ale. It's a good. I think there's good aroma from this. Let's take a sip. Yeah, so again, I get more of the rich caramel, I would say. Let's see if again, this has some descriptors to use here. I don't really get kind of a nuttiness or anything. Definitely get that. Yeah, again, it's not really roast. Some of the flavor, it's like a rich, dark, toasty flavor I get from the malt again. The hops, yeah, the hops on the finish, definitely the finish on the tongue. I do get like a herbal hop flavor from this. It doesn't really finish like a real sweet beer. 10-15 for the final gravity tends to, at least to me, make me think that I should be getting kind of a more like I wouldn't say sweet, but again, sweet's not really a flavor. Well, it is a flavor, but kind of a like a sort of a thickness I would almost expect. It does feel relatively on the scale. If I jump over to the mouthfeel for the body, I'd say it's probably a little somewhere between. It's definitely not thin. Probably a little bit below a typical medium mouthfeel. Probably it feels, at least say, it feels thinner than a 10-15 beer would typically finish, I would say. It doesn't really finish super dry, but it finishes in such a way where there's enough dryness that I definitely want to go in and have another sip. Want to jump right in there and sip again. So The one thing the one funny thing or the interesting thing, the one thing I really liked about this recipe and the beer that as it came out for me, there is a little bit of, some definitely noticeable bitterness in the finish. For me, again, since I tend to be fairly not terribly sensitive to bitterness, meaning I can handle quite a bit. To me, it finishes perfectly and makes me want to take another sip of this beer. It's just one of those things that for a brown ale. In my experience, this is almost like a crushable brown ale. I can sit down and just down this glass. If I'm just drinking, just drink. It's a very drinkable beer in my experience, or again, what I'm taking from this beer. Again, yeah, on the balance, I mean, it's like I get this like upfront malt and everything comes in, jumps around in my and is really up in front here. That's all I get is kind of the toasted and the caramel and kind of the richness. I don't get any of the chocolate that I mentioned before, but it's like this really rich, classic brown flavor almost. Or I wouldn't even say almost, classic brown flavor, brown beer flavor. And then it kind of dissipates, and then to kind of cleanse the palate, there's this little bit of herbaceous hop finish that I get, and a little bit, somewhat of a drying effect. So, I mean, is that astringency? I wouldn't say it's astringency. I just say it's a nice drying finish. And again, if I look back to the descriptors of the actual yeast itself, that's kind of the description itself. It says malt with a dry finish. I definitely get the dry finish. And again, I don't want to go back to it. Again, I wouldn't say dry finish. I'd say dry-ish finish. But for 10-15, it doesn't come like a 10-15 beer, except for that upfront, where we get all this kind of like a malt explosion when I take the first sip. And again, and what I would calculate as the fermentation character. I mean, yeah, I don't think I get much of the classic esters or whatnot, or maybe I'm just confusing it for some of the malt characteristics. But there's none of the citrusy esters that could be in there, or some of those other typical, there's definitely no phenolics in this. You wouldn't expect any sort of phenolics. I don't get any diacetyl. I don't get any of the other, classic flaws that could be in a beer. Yeah, and it just finishes great. I mean, unfortunately, I'm going to be reviewing a few more beers here, so I'm probably not going to finish this whole thing, but this is an easy beer to crush. Easy. So anyway, that's it. Get another view of the head of the beer here. Yeah, that's my thoughts on this. Really happy how this came out. I think the extra time in the keg really helped it out. First, when it was kegged, to me, I was like, it tasted almost more like a brown porter, not the classic, almost black porter, but like a brown porter. I was getting more porter characteristics, giving it some time to settle out and I guess give the flavors a chance to meld. It's coming back to the British brown with kind of a nice hop finish that may or not be to your liking in the brown itself. For me, I think it just takes a British brown ale and just turns it into a surprisingly crushing beer. So that's it. I'll wrap up this video there. Again, I want to thank our sponsors. I'll throw the little sponsor card in here. Again, the sponsors of the Brewtubers Club, they're helping us with the experiment a little bit. The Imperial Yeast, again, I didn't use Imperial Yeast, but all of the participants in the experiment, they sent us all some yeast to use. So if you look at my Instagram, maybe my YouTube, you'll probably see some of these yeasts pop up in the channel. I definitely have some things planned for those yeasts that I'm looking forward to using them. Brewers Hardware is another sponsor of the club. I'm looking around to see if I've had anything within reach from Brewers Hardware, but they have a lot of really cool stainless stuff. If you've watched my channel at all more recently, or watch my Instagram, look at my Instagram. I love the stainless, the shiny stainless stuff. So they have a lot of good high quality equipment. Beer and Wine Hobby is another sponsor of the club. We all bought the recipe ingredients from them to kind of try to keep some consistency across our varied systems and our varied processes, to at least put some consistency in the raw materials that we're using. And again, 5-star chemicals, 5-star PBW, Star San. I'm pretty sure most people who've watching this probably use those cleaning products, those sanitizers in their brewing space. And Yakima Valley Hops is the last one. Again, another great sponsor, great people. We all say within the club, they put these great sales on, and we just have freezers full of hops from Yakima Valley Hops. So that's it. So keep watching for the other reviews. Please like the video. Please subscribe to my channel. My channel is updated sporadically. So, hopefully if, as subscribers grow, it probably gives me a bit more drive to do some more of these type of videos. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye.